Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you're well. Today, we have a webinar with TriStar Gold Incorporated. My name is Jacob Willoughby, and I am Vice President of Research and Analyst at Red Cloud Securities Incorporated. Joining me remotely today is Nick Appleyard, President and CEO of TriStar Gold. We'll begin today's webinar with a presentation on the company by Nick, followed by a question and answer period. As a reminder, you can type in your questions at any time, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Before we begin, I'd like to note that there may be some forward-looking statements made in this webinar, and I would direct listeners to the cautionary notes on page 2 of TriStar Gold's corporate presentation, located on their website, and which you'll see today. For Red Cloud Securities Incorporated, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only, and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. Also, we note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Company-specific disclosures for Red Cloud are the following. In the last 12 months preceding the date or issuance of a research report or recommendation, Red Cloud Securities has performed investment banking services for the issuer. In the last 12 months, a partner, director, or officer of Red Cloud Securities Incorporated or the analyst involved in preparation of the research report has received compensation for investment banking services from the issuer. And now I'm very happy to introduce to you Nick Appleyard, who is President and CEO of TriStar Gold.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Jake. And as welcome everyone for joining. I will just do a quick flick through the presentation here. That'll probably take 10 to 15 minutes, and then afterwards I'm happy to answer anyone's questions that may be out there. As Jacob said, we're going to be looking at what's coming up, what we plan to do for the next few months, our news flow. I want to give people guidelines on our plans and where we want to go now. So there are a lot of forward-looking statements. So please take note of the disclaimer and the warnings on forward-looking statements. Our capital structure here, we have just raised $9 million, which we announced last week, and that has put us in a really, really good situation here financially. So we've got nearly $15 million in the bank. Our market cap is over $80 million right now. And we've got new quality institutions involved, but our long-term supporters in US Global Gold 2000, RBC are still there, still solid. And we still have this really nice breakdown of retail insiders and institutions, in nice proportions. On top of that, we've maintained some pretty good proportions on US, Canada, and Europe and elsewhere as well to give us good geographic diversity in our shareholder base. Something I just like because people in different geographies work in different ways, and it stops getting herd mentality sometimes in your investors. So anyway, capital structure is there. Said market cap's now $80 million. We've got $15 million in the bank. We have analyst coverage from a couple of good analysts at Paradigm and Cormark, and things are moving really, really well from that side. So this is what is TriStar. This is what is the company. Reality company is the people. So there's our directors and management. The management team there that shows myself, Mo, and Scott effectively did a management takeover, took over running the company in December 2015. Most of these directors were in place then. We got Mark, who was the original founder. Brian is our secretary. Quentin Hennig is a world-class expert on paleoplasts and one of the best geologists I've had the pleasure of working with. Carlos Valena is one of the leading lawyers in Brazil, specialized in mining law. And again, a great asset to us in Brazil. Brazil is a great mining country with a long-term mining culture, which is what you want for where you're working. But you also need someone internal who understands how specific jurisdictions work and the best way to get through the system. And that's what Carlos brings to the board. And then Rod McKean is great an expert on corporate governance and is a strong director from that point of view. So as I said, this is, I think, the only slide where we have the location of the property on a map. So you can see we are pretty well geometric center of Brazil on the southern border of Pará state. State below us is Mato Grosso. We are well financed through our current programs now, and this team that I've talked about there, we've all had successes before in the past. And I will talk about, at this point, what our sort of plan is as a company, as a management team. We believe that our strong suit, our market advantage, you might say, is that we can take a discovery through to a production decision really well, grow it, de-risk it, and have it ready for a larger company to come and mine one way or another. We don't care how that happens, as long as whatever's best for the shareholders is the actual result for us. But that's our skill set. This is what we really do. We can develop an asset, move it forward, de-risk it, and have it ready to go. And this is exactly what we're doing with Castelo de Sonhos. So here's the project. It is a paleo placer. When myself and the team did our due diligence on it before putting our money into it, we looked at a lot of the issues here as, before you get to the technical aspects of gold and recovery, it's like, can you mine it? Can you mine in this location? And so for us, it was a lot of tick marks on our checklist. It's right next to a highway. On that image there, you can see a highway running up to the west of the project. That's about 15 kilometers in a straight line. There's power lines up that highway. There's a labor force available. There is heavy equipment workshops there. Everyone's trained in heavy equipment workshops because it's a trucking corridor. You can see from the satellite image there, this is agricultural country. This is not pristine environment. So all of those things for me, and the fact that it's in one of the prime jurisdictions within Brazil for mining. So okay, you've got the tailwind from the state being pro-mining, but then you've also got the infrastructure you need. You've got the previously disturbed countries. You're not doing anything that's disturbing a pristine environment. You're not near a national park. You're not near indigenous populations. Checks all of those boxes that this is a mine, a project that will be able to move forward as a mine. So once we've checked those tick boxes, look at the asset itself. We've got a large land package. It's a paleoplacer. It's a well-known type of deposit for us. It's pretty close to identical to Tarqua and Jacobina in its geology. And what that means to us now is it's near surface. Well, it outcrops to 19 kilometers. So you're looking at shallow open pit mining, no fancy technology there. Very, very simple metallurgy. We're getting sensational recoveries in our previous tests, and we're redoing tests now to upgrade them to Prefeasibility standards. They'll be released sometime in the very near future. And it's environmentally very naturally clean because there are no sulfides. So again, it ticks all the right boxes. So when we put all of that into a scoping study a year or so ago now, we got great results. We grew the resources to 1.3 million ounces of inferred, 700,000 ounces of indicated. We did a PEA. We got the great result of post-tax IRR of 43% at $1,250 gold. And then on the back of that, Royal Gold came in and wanted a royalty, so they got 1.5% NSR for $8 million US. And that money has funded the pre-feasibility study, which we're now well into. And now the best part, I think, for the story is you've got that infrastructure, you've got that great location, you've got this pre-feasibility study happening with a name like Royal Gold behind it, and there's still a lot of upside to talk about. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit more today, because this recent raise we've just completed last week, a lot of that money now is focused on the exploration upside, because we've so far only just scratched the surface on this project. This map just shows a little bit of what's happened over the last few years through the tough market before we've seen this recent climb in gold prices. We managed to grow a resource that was well under 300,000 ounces to what you can see on the left of the screen there, 1.3 million ounces inferred, 700,000 ounces of indicated. It's like a 7-factor growth over a few years through a really tough market. And we still think there's a lot more work that can be done on that. And so that's why we wanted to raise this money, specifically aimed at continuing that exploration growth, seeing where this project can get to. It's pretty worth mentioning here that when myself and my team came in, we had a goal when we wanted to look at projects that we would like to take over and run and develop and get ready to build. Our threshold was something that had the potential to hit 200,000 ounces a year for 10 years. And that's where we still want to get this to. We're not quite there yet. The PFS had 135,000 ounces, sorry, the PEA had 135,000 ounces a year for nearly 8 years. A little bit more growth and we'll be able to hit that target that we saw 5.5 years ago. I mentioned the PEA. Here's the actual results of it. Again, I want to see that at 1750 gold, your NPV goes from 264 up to 616. It's over doubled. The other thing that is not shown on this slide is that we ran the PEA at a 3.8 to 1 exchange ratio, the Brazilian real to the dollar. That exchange ratio is over 5 now, and again, that change massively benefits the project. And again, that data is in the appendix of our presentation if anyone wants to see how strong the leverage is to that exchange rate. But you can see this PEA conceptually showed that at 1250 gold, you've got a very, very strong project. On the back of this, Royal Gold came into us. They did some due diligence to confirm our numbers, as they should, and they bought a 1.5% NSR on the project, $8 million US. And we agreed to them that we would take that money and use it to fund a pre-feasibility study upgrading this PEA. So they didn't want us to waste too much time, waste time of their view, expanding the resources. They wanted to move this forward up to a PFS to get the whole project closer to production, because obviously as a royalty company, that's when they make money. And they also know that as this is moving forward towards production, the rest of the exploration can take place, which is exactly what's happening now. So this is the pre-feasibility study. And what's interesting on here that we really like to point out is it's just on Esperanza South. It's on one corner of the property. We will be able to replicate the aim is to replicate the PEA numbers, the 1.1 million ounces production that was conceptual out of the PEA. But we had to do about 20,000 meters of drilling, which is nearly all complete now. There's a little bit to do, a little bit of geotechnical drilling to do. And but that drilling is all aimed at upgrading the inferred resource to indicated or measured. We have to do a bit of geotechnical drilling, of course, a little bit of other confirmatory drilling. But as I said, most of that is done. I think we've done like 19,500 meters before we had to suspend activities due to COVID-19. Results have been good. We've published them all. They're all available on our website with cross sections and significant intersection tables. But the results have been good, so we expect the resources to come in as there's been no surprises. The results have been good. So, and we are initiating a baseline of environmental studies. That's all started. Those consultants have been selected and are going to be on the site soon. But they've started working on this now. All this aimed at moving Esperanza South towards production. But what that does for us, it helps us de-risk the whole project. As this starts to move forward, as the environmental baseline studies are done, we're not just going to do Esperanza South. We're going to do as I said, the bugs and bunnies surveys across the whole project. We're going to do the water hydrology across the whole project. Just, because you're doing that once, you're going to be doing it multiple times. So you're de-risking the whole project, moving it forward. We're using really good global experts on this, the best we can find. And as I said, so far it's been going good. We had anticipated finishing this study by November this year. Due to international travel restrictions recently, we've had to delay certain people visiting sites, certain activities. We anticipate they'll start again pretty soon, so that finish date has now been probably pushed back to April, May next year. But anyway, the study is going well. We will be publishing results along the way as they come to hand. And that's it's going to be a nice feather in the cap of the project to show that here's the pre-feasibility study with the engineering stamps of a lot of people showing this part here can be a mine. So that brings us to the recent raise that we did, this $9 million we raised last week, the aim of that was to have funds available to aggressively explore the rest of the asset. As I mentioned, Esperanza South is the pre-feasibility study target area. Even that isn't drilled out. There's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of down dip extension, strike extension, open areas there that can be drilled still to increase our resource base. Esperanza East, Esperanza Center have both got some drilling in them. They've both got small inferred resource bases on them. But again, lots of open land where we have conglomerate on surface, gold and soil anomalies, informal workings. So all the signs that the gold is there in the conglomerate, it just needs drilling out. So we've got a lot of what we just call the undrilled outcrop. It's outcrop where you've got gold-bearing conglomerates. And it's just a matter of stepping out, just keep following it, keep drilling it, and increasing resources that way. What we decided about our exploration last year was that we really wanted to have a lot of exploration done aggressively by the time the pre-feasibility study is published. You know, we want to get to that point where we've got TriStar, we've got Castello de Soños at a production decision point. There's a PFS out, there's some proven and probable reserves, and we'll be looking for how is this mine now going to get built. But if I'm having that conversations with a larger company, or you know, I want to make sure that I've got all my cards on the table. I've got the exploration done, so we can say, look, you know, if you want to come and help us mine this, here's Esperanza South, but here's all these other bits, and I don't want someone doing the deal, trying to do a deal with me, only looking at the value of Esperanza South. It's the whole asset. So we decided that the quickest and most efficient way for us to explore the property was to be clever. So we partnered with Gold Spot Discoveries to use their artificial intelligence and their machine learning that they are experts at. And I must say, it's been really, really impressive what they've been able to do. They've been able to help us fine-tune our surface targets. They've identified brand new conglomerates that we hadn't recognized, hadn't mapped properly before. They've given us better orientation on them than we had before. We've linked some things together incorrectly. In general, it's just been impressive what a computer can do with your own data. We haven't generated any new data for them, really. It's just they've used our data, but they've done it consistently and using the very latest technologies. So it's been impressive. So they're helping us develop two things really right now. Fine-tuning our assessment of these surface targets, telling us the best places to go and drill with the best possible chance of increasing resources on the outcropping conglomerates, and identifying new conglomerates, as I said, which we hadn't identified before. They have actually identified a whole new band of conglomerates. It's sitting, I don't know if people can see, but the blue color on the flat 2D map, that top band of blue is a conglomerate band that we had not recognized. It's on our concession. We've looked at it now. There's some Garimpo workings in it, which means there's very, highly probable there's gold in it. We haven't even tested it, so I don't even think we've got soil lines across it. So there's a lot of stuff for us to go now and look at. It's really exciting. I said there's two parts what they're looking at. So the outcrop is like, sounds a bit boring to say, but more or less like it's more shallow, open pit target. The other thing they're helping us look at is a deeper target. So as a simple explanation, nearly every gold deposit you find is formed through a series of events that take very low concentration of gold in rocks and concentrate it down. And very rarely one event. It's usually a series of events. And that's exactly what's happened at Castello de Soños. There was a series of events, potential glaciation, erosion, deposition into alluvial fans, changing sea level target height levels at the time through climate change, which is interesting. And that's what formed the paleoplacer deposit. In parts of this, we also know there is one further step that happened when that paleoplacer was then remobilized and reconcentrated again. So this is what our CDS Deeps target is. We know that we have younger rocks underneath the conglomerate. We know that those younger rocks have remobilized the gold, and we have enriched them around the border of them. What we don't know is what really happens lower down in the deposit, where that intrusion of younger rocks through the older rocks takes place over hundreds of meters or kilometers of space. So that's what we call CDS deepest targets, which would be a completely different style of target. Like I said, it's a next generation after the paleoplacer. Different style of target, but potentially very, there's a lot of space down there. It's potentially very, very big. But it would be an underground, higher grade mine is what we're targeting. That work is also ongoing, and we are hoping to be able to be on site with drill rigs testing this fairly soon. So I'm actually just going to go backwards for a bit to this slide. So I think the critical message I want to pass out from today is we have our PFS ongoing now. That's going to be completed April, May. There's work going on the metallurgy, geotechnical stuff, resource estimation and reserve estimation, cost estimation. That's all happening. And that's going to be released as we're going. In parallel with that, and probably more as aggressively as we can, we're going to be talking about this exploration and what's going to happen. So I just want to give you a bit of guidance. Obviously, we had to suspend activity at the project. We didn't have to legally in Brazil, but it was prudent to do so. We have to look after our staff and the communities we work in due to COVID-19. So we will be getting back into work there very, very soon. We're tracking it on a daily basis, but their medical facilities are now available in close by to us, which is the main thing we're tracking. So we anticipate being back on site in August, and we anticipate we will be drilling these targets in September. That's our current best estimate of the timeline. Obviously, you're appraising like we're all are with this pandemic, but we will have an RC rig and a core rig drilling from September until, well, for the foreseeable future now, aimed at really the RC rig doing the shallow targets, the core rig doing the deep targets. If we get drilling as we hope to early September, that means we would have our first results out. Late September would be optimistic, early October would be more realistic. So this is going to come pretty quickly. We're not talking about stuff which is, 6 months, a year away. This is stuff that's going to be coming fairly soon now. So as soon as we get these drill rigs on site, especially the RC rig, they drills a hole a day. So every few days we're sending it off to the lab, and a couple of weeks later we get the assays back. Core rig's obviously a bit slower, but this is stuff that's going to be happening fairly quickly now. And that is our presentation for the day. So it's very simple. We're a single asset company. And we're going to have a lot of news flow now over the next 6 months, exploration and PFS. That's me done, so I'll hand back to Jacob and see if there's any questions here.
Thank you, Nick. That's a great overview. First question comes about actually Goldspot and wondering how you pay them for the work they do. Do you pay in cash or shares or a combination?
They're paid like a consultant. Okay. Yeah.
Paid in cash. Now, we talked a lot about getting onto the ground and how news flow is going to start up again. With this increased funding, how much of the exploration drilling do you expect to be able to do over the next program?
It's tough to put actual meters or dollars onto it because we don't have the program yet, and it's going to be iterative based on results. But as I just guided, I think the best way to think of it is for the next 6 months, I think we'll have a core rig and an RC rig on site drilling constantly. Moving from target to target, testing different targets.
Right. And the drilling for upgrading resources is almost done. So pretty much all of the drilling starting in October will be exploration now?
Yeah, we have about a total of about 2,000 meters, I believe, that we would like to do in Esperanza South on the infill. But the time constraints on Esperanza South of the geotechnical work and getting an international consultant in there who needs to sit on that geotechnical rig. So while we're waiting for that, we will be moving the rig to Esperanza South. A 1,000 meters, like I said, it doesn't take that long. That's less than 2 weeks drilling with an RC rig. So we'll be doing some of that and then moving off to the exploration targets and then moving back and forwards. It's nice to have a place to trade off, because you don't want to have a hungry drill rig sitting on exploration target, over drilling it initially before you get drill results back.
Right. Yeah. Now, I had a question myself on your some of the work that Goldspot did for you. You said they actually found a conglomerate member that you had not been aware of.
Yeah, as I mentioned, around the top of the Esperanza Central, they identified a new conglomerate band. We've had someone down to look at it. They've identified conglomerates. They've identified there's some Garampo workings there. That's all we've been able to do really during the suspended activities. We've only got a skeleton crew on site, but we will get in there now and map it and run soil lines across it and test it for how potential it really is. But it's really impressive on the technology that they can come up with. And the reason we hadn't found it is topographically it was a difficult to access.
Sorry, it was difficult to access topographically?
Yes, yeah, because we're on a plateau. It was on the floor. It was almost where the plateau meets the ground, so you have to come off the plateau and drive around to get to this spot.
Ah, okay. So was it the case that it was also under some cover, or was it actual outcrop?
It outcrops is an outcrop now. Yeah. So yeah.
That happens when you have over 17,000 hectares there.
It does, yeah, and it's I always tell our team, you have to use this time now. We've had a couple of months to sort of reset and think. Is a great opportunity to question everything you think you know about a project. Because I think we've all been on a project before where you go, there's no gold out in the granite, so there's no gold over there, and someone comes along after you and they find gold exactly where you knew there wasn't any. So our team is told now, like, question everything you know. And I think it's a chance to have that reset.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of companies who have, I don't want to say benefited from the shutdown, but have had time to relook at things and reevaluate things that have generated some positive leads.
Yeah, we've been generating a lot of work for our guys as soon as they get back on site. They'll be back on site soon, and they've got long lists of stuff to get right into. So. Right.
There's a question from a participant asking about the financing. I don't know if you can talk a bit about the composition of the investors. Were there many institutions, or is it mostly individuals, or how did that work out?
Our aim, what we really like to have, is sort of like have insiders, friends, and families have about a third, institutions a third, and a third retail. I think on our investor page, we're not quite at that, but it's not that far off, I think. But we have 3 long-term institutions that we publish and they've allowed us to do that. The recent raise, a number of significant institutions invested in this, and we haven't spoken to them about disclosing their names, but we do have somewhere around 30-35%, I believe, institutions in the company right now as investors.
Great. There's a question from online about if you could sort of update people on the political situation in Brazil.
Brazil is close.
Pun not intended. Political situation is always shifting there, and they've got a lot of news in our part of the world about COVID kind of being rampant there. Maybe you could update us a bit on what you see going on in Brazil.
Yeah, they've been hit. Their obviously president was a little bit of a COVID denier or a COVID minimizer, at least. He sort of didn't think it was a big deal. From what I hear internally, he's not as crazy as he seems. He was just on the opinion that they wouldn't be able to survive an economic downturn if everyone stayed at home. So he was trying to drive businesses to stay at work. On the COVID numbers themselves, we're seeing great decline in the mortality rates in Brazil. I was looking at some data of Rio de Janeiro just this morning, and they're really down low now. So the wave seems to be passing through there. Where they've handled it well or not, I don't know. What we're looking at a lot is the medical infrastructure in the region we're working. We actually have connections into all local hospitals, just verbal through radiologists making the contact, and that's how we're guiding our work. While those hospitals were under stress, we weren't going to send other people back into there, because it's not just COVID. I mean, if a hospital's under stress and there's no free beds and you have a car accident, the people aren't going to get looked after. And stress is now reducing, so that's why we're now planning on getting back in there fairly soon. So. But yeah, politically, I believe Bolsonaro is under some pressure. There's a lot of anti-Bolsonaro people out there, but how that plays out.
Now, sometimes when people think about Brazil, they live in like a tropical rainforest or a jungle. That's not really the situation where you guys are. There seems to be a lot of agricultural activity around you. Can you talk to us about what your ground is and you're actually on? Yeah,
so most of the ground around us is used for cattle grazing. And to the south of us, there's a lot of the soybean production. We actually sort of benefit, I guess, from that, because that's why that highway and power line and the labor force, they're all there as infrastructure to support the soy industry. But where we are, I would call it low margin cattle grazing, which is to a benefit for us, because we obviously need to be able to work with the local farmers. And I think benefits are twofold. One, they're fairly broad acre farms, so you deal with two farmers and you cover our whole plateau. And it's pretty easy for us to put a deal in place which offers them more money than they make off their cattle grazing. So, and obviously the third part is the environmental damage has been done by the farmers and the informal miners from the 90s. So whatever we do is going to be beneficial.
Right. So with this recent raise of $9 million, that brings your approximate cash position to what now?
About 15 million Canadian, just under 15 million.
Right. And essentially that could suffice for about a year, I guess, for all the work you want to do.
So can you just repeat that, Jake?
Could that last the company a year?
Oh, at least, yeah. I mean, it all changes if we hit something massive deep down and we want to drill it like crazy. But yeah, that's going to last us. We're actually rebudgeting now based on that, but easily through the end of next year.
Right. So if you get the PFS out in May, would you sort of look to start a feasibility right after that?
The whole pre-feas and feasibility study is a really big question for me. This is such a simple project, but we will do enough work on the pre-feas to get to a production decision on that. The only thing that's really lacking is the drilling out maybe 1/3 of the resources to measure to get proven resources. Metallurgical facility process plan is very, very simple. It's not, there are not a lot of trade-offs you need to do on how to recover the gold, how to deal with ARDs. We haven't got any of that, so it's really simple. So our thoughts are, with the PFS, you'll get a production decision on that. You've got 12 to 18 month period then to get your installation license to permit it. During that period, you would drill out the additional 1/3 of the resources and call that your feasibility study, but there would be very little other work to do. So it would be in parallel to permitting, and really it's just to make sure that you can finance it when you get those permits. The bank's going to require 1/3 proven you've got that, but the project itself would be frozen, because you can do what you say.
Sure. Now, for some people who are not as familiar with paleoplastics, maybe you could quickly talk about the process of metallurgical recovery and how to work.
Yeah. So the paleoplastics are as variable as every other type of deposit. There's a wide range in what they're like, but we're very, very similar to charcoal, which means we have fairly fine gold, fairly nicely distributed deposit. Gold's about 100 microns, so it's size of sand, I guess. But it is free gold in sand and quartz conglomerates. There is no sulfide. The gold isn't contained in anything. What that means is once we crush the rock fine enough, gold dissolves very easily and can be recovered by pretty well any metallurgical process, by gravity flotation or cyanidation. So yeah, I mean, we know that Jacobina and Tarkwa recover 97, 98% recovery. We used 95% recovery at PEA, a little bit of a conservative mark there. Our MET test at that point had given us a 98% average, but we're just conservative by nature. We have now nearly completed metallurgical test work for the PFS itself, and looking at publishing that very soon. So it's on our mind, but there's no surprises coming on there. It's all good.
Yeah, and with there not being sulfides, your tailings are non-acid generating. They're essentially very clean.
Correct. Yeah. It's just very inert material. Yeah.
That's great. I think we'll stop here for now. That was an excellent presentation, and we're big fans of this company, and looking forward to seeing the drilling and more news come through. I'd like to thank you, Nick, and participants for joining us today. And I'll just give you a quick reminder that our next webinar is tomorrow, Tuesday, July 21st, but actually at 4 p.m., not 2 p.m. This will be with Mawson Resources, with their chairman and CEO, Michael Hudson, and will be hosted by Derek McPherson, also VP of Research at Red Cloud Securities. So thank you very much, Nick.
Thanks very much, Jacob.
Look forward to having a follow-up, perhaps from the PFS out in April and May.
Okay, absolutely. There'll be lots of news before then as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And to everyone participating, thank you, and stay safe.